Okay, so we have the basics of our kill Z volume working. Basically what we have here, when our player overlaps with our kill Z, we're printing a string that just says true for the condition being true. So the last thing we really need to do before we move on from this is to put in our actual functionality. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete this print string. This was for sort of debugging purposes only. We don't actually want to print anything when we hit our kill Z volume. What we do want to do is to restart our level. So unfortunately, with a lot of these Unreal Engine blueprinting nodes, how you know what nodes to use is largely just through practice and experience, and sometimes a lot of Google searching. But the node we are going to use to restart our level is going to be an open level by name node. So let's pull out from this true pin here, because we only want this to happen if this condition is true. And let's just search open level, or just open, and you'll get open level by name or by object reference. We're just gonna go with by name here. So it will pull up this node for you with one input here for your level name. And currently it is set to none. So what this is gonna do is it's going to check whatever we type in here, and it's going to search our content folder for a level of that name. So in order for this to work properly, we need to type in our level name exactly as it appears here in our content browser. So this means it needs to be not only spelled correctly, but the capitalization will matter here, as well as the spacing. It will not ignore blank spaces. It will not parse for capitalization differences. So what we're going to do here is we're going to delete where it says none, and we're going to write in tutorial temple. Again, I have both T's capitalized, and I have no space in between them on the actual level file name. So this is exactly how it needs to appear. So what we're going to do is just compile and save. And let's test this out now by returning to our level and hitting play. Okay, we have our little guy here. We're gonna pop him in here, and you'll see that instead of just deleting the character and leaving us in the pit, we are instantly respawning back to where our player start is. So essentially, that is all we need to do here for our kill Z volume. Let's group these together by clicking and dragging over everything to highlight it, and let's press C to comment it out. And we're going to call this Pitfall Respawn, or something to that effect. And again, I'm just commenting these to keep my code clean, and so I can group these together and move them around. So this is pretty simple here. Now, in order to get this working, all we would need to do is to extend this functionality into every room in which we have a pit. So currently, if I jump into the pit in room 3, this does not work. And this is simply because when we put our kill Z volume, if you remember, into our level, we extended it only around the bounds of this first pit. So there is no functionality right here. So in order to get this to work everywhere, you have a couple options. Either you can duplicate this process by duplicating a new kill Z volume over here, and basically for each kill Z volume, duplicating this code. Or in our case, what is very simple for us to do is we're just going to make this bigger, and we're going to make this encompass the entire bottom of the level. Now, this is only going to work if you all your bottomless pits are relatively the same height. So what I mean by that, let's go into the right orthographic view. So if you recall, we raised a couple of our rooms. We raised room 1 and room 5 to add some variation to this level. Now, I didn't raise or lower any of the rooms that contain bottomless pits. But if you did, you would need to account for those variable heights in order for this to work, and you may need to duplicate the kill Z volume and basically copy and paste this code in order for it to work. But since all of our pits are at the same height here, instead what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move the kill Z volume to the center, and I'm just going to start scaling it out. So about there, and I'm going to come into the top view, and I'm going to scale it along the Y. And I'm just going to let it, make sure it covers this pit, and this pit. And it's totally fine if it covers more, as long as it doesn't intersect with any area of your level that you actually need to be able to walk on. So if you're testing out your game and you're finding that you're hitting a kill Z up on the floor, well, that's something that needs to be addressed either by moving the kill Z volume or separating them out into several. So let's just play through this all the way to make sure we don't have any errors. So I'm just going to delete that player start, and I'm going to put it back over here. So as long as you only have one player start in your level, Unreal should not be confused by you deleting it and re-adding it. If you have multiple, it might start at the wrong one. So we have that. Great. That works correctly. Let's test the next one. Great. So what strikes me about this room 3 pit is that maybe it's a little high up. We seem to be hitting our kill Z about here. So I'm just going to lower it down a little bit. So I'm going to go back into right orthographic view right here. I'm just going to lower this down to about here so we fall a little bit longer before we respawn. And because this kill Z covers the entire width and length of our level, I don't necessarily need to give it a lot of depth, I don't believe. So let's test this again. Room 1, room 2. So we fall a little bit farther before we respawn. Jump. And fall a little bit farther again. And now how far you want to fall and things like that is largely up to you. You just want to make sure that it feels good to play. So take some time to play test all your rooms and all the conditions for failure in your rooms to make sure that it feels right. So that feels about right to me. So with that in mind, we can move on to our next our next obstacle here. So I'm just working in this level from basically start to finish. So we have no obstacles in the first room, we just run through. All right, we've taken care of the first obstacle here, which is a pitfall, but because of the nature of it, it actually covers, you know, all the bottomless pits here. So the next thing that we need to code for is we need to make these falling blocks that are going to fall down as the player runs across this catwalk. So I'm actually going to pause the recording here, and we're going to come back in the next video and start fresh with those falling blocks.